Welcome back. The Trump administration launching a wide-ranging government-wide anti-fraud effort. The Labor Department's Inspector General, Anthony D'Esposito, now leading a major investigation into H-1B and PERM employment visas, as well as potential human trafficking cases. Joining me now, the man leading the investigation, U.S. Department of Labor Inspector General, Anthony D'Esposito. Inspector General, great to have you. Welcome.
Great to be with you, Maria. Thanks for having me.
Well, this sounds very serious. Tell us about your investigation. Are you saying that there is fraud and human trafficking within the H-1 visa program and the program that is the Program Electronic Review Management, or PERM system?
Without a doubt, and we are going to take an aggressive action, what we believe is probably the most aggressive action against foreign labor fraud by an Inspector General of this administration. We've already started to issue dozens of subpoenas. We are going to make sure that we track down every lead. We have whistleblowers talking about some of the biggest companies like Cognizant, who have been in chatter of issues with PERM and H-1B visas, and we are going to work side by side with the President and Vice President's fraud task force to exhaust every lead. I'm going to take this exactly like I did when I was an NYPD detective, and I'm going to give and make sure my investigators and auditors have every resource necessary in order to conduct this investigation for the American people. And quite frankly, the fraud task force has been very clear. Vice President Vance has said there's no fraud too small, there's no fraud too large. And this is another example where fraud is fueling violent crime. Much of the visa and the human trafficking that we see when it comes to this foreign labor is tied to cartels, is tied to transnational gangs. And this is the work that we should be doing, not only to make America safe again, but to make America more affordable again.
Wow, that's just incredible. I mean, look, the OIG says that you've uncovered schemes involving employers and labor brokers who submitted fraudulent applications, exploited foreign workers through coercive wage kickback arrangements. Tell us how they're doing it.
Absolutely, and those are, again, people coming from different countries. They are cutting deals with what could be gangs or other groups. They're bringing them, and it's not just, let's be clear, this is not just people working in factories or actual labor. These are people working in medical facilities and doctors' offices that are actually putting people in harm's way. I mean, to the potential of causing death. So we are going to make sure that we, again, exhaust every lead that there is, whether it's in a factory in Middle America, whether it's along the ports in either the East or West Coast, or it has to do with doctors or nursing facilities anywhere in the United States of America. There is no question that fraud is a tax that we never voted for. And President Trump has made it very clear that he is going to tackle fraud. He gave Vice President this ability to work with this task force, and we have a great working relationship with the Fraud Enforcement Division in the Department of Justice, alongside Todd Blanche and Colin McDonald, who have really given our auditors and investigators the resources that they need. Again, being able to coordinate and cooperate with the U.S. Attorney's Office is something that we didn't see under the Biden administration. Quite frankly, I speak to my investigators daily who said they would present cases to prosecutors during the Biden administration and very often would hear, oh, we're sorry, that doesn't meet the threshold. A $3 million fraud case didn't meet the threshold that day. And President Trump has made it very clear that that is not going to be the case anymore, and fraudsters are going to be hunted down. They are going to be investigated. They're going to be arrested, and they're going to put behind bars. And
also, it's a work issue for American workers, because workers say that they've been displaced or harmed by these potential H-1B or PERM fraud-related incidents, right?
Absolutely, and if you look at the states who are on the top 5 list of applicants for these visas, shockingly enough, it's California, it's New York, it's Illinois, and yes, we've seen over since President Trump was inaugurated, his job numbers have been fantastic. And think about the fact that he has made clear that he wants to rein in the golden age of the American worker, where American jobs are for American workers, and that's our focus. Is we want to make sure that we root out out any fraud, waste, and abuse in the visa program to make sure that the American people, the hardworking Americans who want to get to work in President Trump's administration are able to do just that, and they are not seeing their jobs taken away by foreigners or people who are gaming the system or financially benefiting from bringing these individuals into America and putting them into jobs that, quite frankly, they are not qualified to do.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole other leg to this story. We've been following the fraud and the government's efforts quite closely, and the Labor Department recovered more than $512 million in fraudulent unemployment claims related to the CARES Act back to the Treasury Department. This is the second major recovery from the Maryland Division of Unemployment Insurance, now totaling more than $1 billion. Inspector, tell us more about this. How did this happen?
Yeah, listen, it's great work. Again, I am blessed to be able to work with amazing people, auditors, investigators, administrators who have been working night and day and have been all in on this effort to root out fraud that President Trump has put forth. And this was a huge undertaking. And I think what's critical about this is not just the identification of the money, but the fact that because of Vice President J.D. Vance's fraud task force, we were able to work together with the U.S. Treasury and claw this money back into the Treasury for the American people. I mean, there is so much money out there when it comes to fraud. And again, you look at a place like California. Gavin Newsom is $22 billion in debt to the UI Trust Fund, which means he owes over $22 billion to the American people because of money he borrowed into unemployment insurance. And quite frankly, that bill is eventually going to have to be paid. And right now, the people who are holding the bag are the business owners in California. You take a place like New York, my hometown, your hometown. I mean, the state of New York is losing between $1.5 and $2 million per day in either overpayments or fraud. That's per day, not per week, not per month, not per year. Almost $2 million per day. So next week, we're going to have a strike team heading into New York to start reviewing all of this documents so that we can make sure that the money is kept for the American people.
Well, the numbers are mind-boggling, Anthony. Thanks very much for your work on this. We'll be watching it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Anthony D'Esposito joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.